everyone, welcome back to Heartland Mamas.
I'm Heidi Henry,
And I'm Murray Briel.
and we are coming at you today with our second podcast.
Thank you so much for those of you who tuned into our first one.
It was a lot of fun.
We had some amazing feedback.
Yeah. So it's time for us to get into the weeds and to really go talk about some really important issues besides introducing ourselves.
And we need to tackle the assault on women's rights.
So here at the edge of the Great Red Divide, into the purpley areas of Illinois, facing westward all the way to the west coast, the Heartland Mamas are going to take a true look at women's reproductive health.
And how that affects not only the control issue, which is what we hear so much about, but how it affects physical, mental, emotional, the full impact of what these wars on women's reproductive rights entail.
Yeah, we know that with the legislation that's been passed in the last 2 weeks by 6 different states that were extremely repressive reproductive legislation. And these bills are often referred to as heartbeat bills, and there is no heartbeat involved. I want you to understand that that is one of those phrases they use to get your attention. It's electrical activity that all cells, when they join together, create. So when these bills are written, they're not written by physicians, they're written by people who are politicians that don't really have the medical knowledge that they need to be able to legislate women's bodies.
So we are extremely fortunate being in the heartland. We're this state of blue, and our legislator had a fantastic week last week. One of those bills that passed is so important, and that's the Reproductive Health Act. And what that does is it repeals a 1975 law that required spousal approval,
Right.
That takes away waiting periods, removes restrictions on clinics. It also allows for partial birth abortion.
Partial birth abortion is really a misnomer. I, as a woman, had struggled very hard to have children. I had multiple miscarriages. And what happens is when you're miscarrying or when you have a stillborn birth or child inside you, they have to dilate the cervix. So I'm warning you, this could trigger some people. They have to dilate the cervix to help facilitate the abortion. And these late-term abortions are only done in extremely rare instances. This is not a common occurrence.
No, it's not. And that can even happen before the 20-week time that they
Right.
have to do that.
Right.
All it means is a cervix dilation.
You're not pushing the baby out and then having an abortion. It's a cervix dilation, which means the baby is still up in the womb. It's just to facilitate the medical staff to be able to perform the medical procedure. And the really important part about this, and again, I'm going to touch on the fact that I know I'm not alone with reproductive struggles. I know I'm not alone because there's so many of us out there. It is one of the most painful, emotional times of your life. And to put the restrictions on like they've done in other states, in many of those states, simply because I had multiple miscarriages, the police would be involved. I could end up in prison just because of how I was born. I can't help the fact that I had those issues. And it just destroys me when I think about the amount of emotional pain I was in at the time, what other women will have to go through.
I've been through a similar situation, but what frustrates me, not only the emotional pain that women go through, their partners go through, whatever the situation is, not only the emotional and the physical intrusion, but the way that proponents who are pro-birth spin it and manipulate that narrative. Like you said, partial birth abortion. It means cervix dilation.
Right.
The
other thing is an abortion is a D&C, so they have to go in and they have
dilation and cauterization.
Yeah, and you have to, when you have a miscarriage, in order to be able to carry a child to term after, have the chance, you have to have a D&C. It's the same procedure, and I've had several D&Cs in my life. I mean, that's just the nature of having reproductive issues. And the fact that I have 2 children 8 years apart is a miracle. But I want to touch on that spousal approval thing. When I had my daughter in 1994, I was on the table having an emergency cesarean section. My husband had to sign permission for me to have a tubal ligation. Now, I was in my mid-30s. I wasn't a young woman, you know. I was in my mid-30s. And we had to stop what we were doing. My husband had to fill out paperwork so that I, on my body, could have...
That is absolutely
tubal.
bananas.
We were never going to have
That's
even try again. I mean, we were done.
insane that you needed that permission. And that was how many years ago?
Well,
24?
Yeah, 24 years ago. And I'll tell you what, I was livid. Had I not been blocked from the neck, you know, from the shoulders down, I would have gotten up and punched that doctor. Why would I have to have my husband sign off on something about my body? And it's not that we hadn't been in an agreement and I hadn't discussed it with my doctor before. We knew that if we went to another emergency section that this was a procedure we were going to do. But my husband had control over my body. I find that to be egregious. He could have gone and gotten a vasectomy without my permission.
Right.
So
Illinois did an amazing job by passing the Reproductive Health Act, and it gives us so much more freedom. It gives us our health. It's extremely important. But what really I found interesting is a Republican congressman from the great state of Illinois was criticizing the state legislature, considering the fact that he's done nothing in how many years, and he's criticizing them for moving the state forward. And he tweets, Illinois government wrapped up session after they raised taxes with no property tax relief.
This is my congressman.
Increased spending, legalized abortion in brutal ways to the moment of birth, and got rid of parental notifications, then raised the tobacco age to 21. It's no wonder people are fleeing our state. Okay, right there.
Okay, this is my congressman, and he seldom makes sense. Adam Kinzinger, I'm looking at you. And I've let him know that on multiple occasions. People are not fleeing the state because they can't buy cigarettes when they're under 21, for Pete's sake. And nobody's doing it. Abortions at birth.
And that's what I want to connect here, is that the term partial birth abortion, the term, referring to it as the heartbeat bills, as opposed to being the electrical impulses, you have a U.S. representative representing a state, criticizing the state legislature, and then describing a reproductive health act as abortion in brutal ways to the moment of birth.
Simply a lie.
Emotional appeal, trigger, causing dissension and divisiveness.
Right.
He has no business, not to mention he has absolutely no understanding of the female reproductive system.
Well, he has no medical training whatsoever. How does he know?
I have absolutely no idea.
He doesn't know, and he's just dog whistling to his base. That's all this is a dog whistle.
Now, one of the things that I find interesting about this, in the end of his tweet, is he said, no wonder people are fleeing our state. Well, he's never here, so it's not really his state.
He's never here.
But I say he's got it absolutely wrong. So the GOP, the conservatives, the pundits out there are saying, oh, well, Illinois, everybody's leaving. You're raising the taxes. But what Illinois is doing is Illinois is providing opportunity. Illinois is redoing its infrastructure. Illinois is working on getting a tax so you make more, you pay more. They have independent freedoms for women's health. They have legalization of marijuana. So if you look at the states, a balanced budget. So look at the states surrounding us, especially to the south and east and west. You have Iowa, which is very conservative. And then you have Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, Sweet Mary, Kentucky. All of those are regressive states. All of those are states that are telling us what we can and can't do, and what we can and can't do with our bodies.
In any gender whose body is legislated by the state, by the government, is not free. When you can tell people what they can and cannot do with their bodies, women aren't free. You take us as a supermajority in population, and you relegate us to the back seat. And ladies, we've been in the back seat far too long. We can't go back. We just simply cannot go back.
Absolutely not.
It's not going to make people have more abortions. It's not going to make people seek out more abortions that wouldn't normally. It's going to make it a safe place for people from other states to come if they need to. It's a safe legal procedure. It is our constitutional right. That constitutional right still stands. Roe v. Wade still stands as constitutional law. And we have to remember that we're fighting for our right for equality.
The ideology behind the pro-life crowd is ridiculous. My husband came up with the term pro-birth, and I'm like, no, it's anti-choice. He said, no, it's pro-birth. He said, because as soon as they're born, they don't care.
Right.
You can't tell me that they do, because the ones who are sponsoring, I don't see the loudest protesters of women's reproductive restrictions being the ones that are having 15 foster children, improving the foster care system, providing meals, lunches, education, not allowing our kids to get shot in schools.
Well, and at the same time, they want to cut back nutrition assistance, they want to cut back SNAP, they want to cut back Medicaid. Women are being held completely responsible, and I had said on my Facebook feed the other day, a man can have sex at least 365 days a year. Out of that, he can produce 365 children. A woman in that same period of time can have one child. Why is she the one that's penalized all the time? We are held to a different standard, and that is simply unacceptable. And abortion is not about murdering children. It is a reproductive choice.
I think a lot of things come down to it being a personal choice. What my personal choice is my personal choice, and I should have the ability to do something that I feel is best for my medical condition, for my life, with my physician.
Right.
And
completely private.
So why should I say you can't do this?
And I'm going to use this analogy. My husband went through prostate cancer last year. While I was running for office, he was going through radiation treatments. And he discussed with his doctor several different options. Most of the time I wasn't present for this very serious procedure. I had no say in it whatsoever on whether he would have radiation, whether he would have shots, whether he'd have a prostatectomy. And that's part of the reproductive, area of the male genitalia. Not my circus, not my monkey. He is my husband, and I respect his decision. He decided to go with radiation because his serious back surgery made him a poor candidate for a prostatectomy. But he never even asked me. It wasn't my choice. It wasn't my decision, I can't imagine inserting my husband between me and my doctor when I go for my pelvic exam or my yearly or my breast exam or my mammogram or even my colonoscopy. I really don't want my husband consulting with my doctor. It's really my business. And I certainly don't want Adam Kinzinger, my congressman, making those decisions for me.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And like we were saying, I think that we are going to see an influx of population in Illinois. I think that it's definitely coming because we're moving so far forward and because of states like Missouri.
Yes.
So Missouri recently has gone through, they have one clinic left. The clinic's been around since, I believe it's 1975. And they've restricted it to everywhere except for one for the entire state.
It's near St. Louis, I know that, yeah.
So there's a doctor who's an OGBY. I got that one wrong, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
She's an OGBYN in Missouri, and she practices at that clinic. And her name's Dr. Amy Adante. And she posted yesterday that, today I was forced by the state of Missouri to perform an unnecessary pelvic exam on a patient terminating her pregnancy for fetal abnormality. She's heartbroken over her situation, and I was forced to do an invasive, uncomfortable exam. It broke me as a physician to do this to her. Now, you can imagine what sort of responses Amy got from this.
Oh.
And at first, viscerally, you're like, well, why did you do that? Why would she do that? She knows it goes against everything she believes in. She's calming harm. That's the Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm is the first
first do no harm. Yeah.
First, do no harm. So, and through the discussion, I came to understand that the state places requirements on women getting an abortion. They have to have a pelvic exam 72 hours prior to, as well as on the day of the procedure in Missouri. Mm-hmm.
Please.
Now, those are absolutely against the, they're against the College of Obstetrics and Gynecology.
Yeah.
They're against the statistics for fetal maternal health.
Right.
Both of those think that these policies are invasive, intrusive, non-beneficial to the patients.
Right.
That practice goes against best practices for the medical community.
Well, in Murray, we have one of the highest infant mortality rates and maternal mortality rates in the world. We are the leading of first world countries. We have the highest infant mortality, and moms and babies die at an exponential rate.
Why it's pro-birth.
Yeah.
Because once a baby is born, we don't want to provide medical care. We don't want to provide assistance to the mom.
We don't want to provide prenatal care.
We don't. Oh, absolutely not. We don't want to take care of the woman.
We don't want to take care of the
But
baby.
if you're in another state where they've just done these ridiculous laws and you don't give me the prenatal care that I need and I lose my baby, the DA can come to my house and prosecute me for killing my child.
Well, in Indiana, they passed a law where you have to bury the remains. I can't imagine having to go through that after a miscarriage. Because it goes, any D&C has to be interned, and the cost, the emotional train wreck that's going to cause, I can't imagine. I did not need a place to go grieve for the babies that weren't born for me. I didn't need that because they weren't going to be a baby anyway. They were tissue. And the tissue wasn't going to survive.
Now, on the opposite side, we have 3 boys, I think most of you know, and in between our second son and our third son, we miscarried a daughter. And what we did was I planted a bush that would be particularly colorful at the time that she would have been born, which is October. So she's our Lily, and, we keep her in our memory that way. But again, it all goes to attacking women's rights. So it's not just that they want to be pro-birth. The harder I make it for a woman to control her own body, the easier it is for me to control them.
Exactly.
And that's what it comes down to in a nutshell. So the law in Missouri, if she would have refused, she could have lost her license.
Yes.
She could have been imprisoned. But farther reaching than that, more terrifying, is she would have put at risk the one clinic in the entire state.
Right.
So as you have all of these assaults coming from every direction, people are going to come here because they know that it may not be perfect, but at least nobody's telling me what the hell I can and can't do with my body.
Well, and I think Illinois showed us last week with the legislation that went through that we are on the right track, that we are on a healthy forward momentum, that good things are going to happen here. And we have the most positivity here in Illinois than we've had. And it's not just about reproductive health, it's everything.
Everything.
Our
infrastructure. We're moving in the right direction.
We have probably the healthiest outlook we've had in Illinois in
a long time.
Probably 20 years that I can remember.
And it's even more important that we can keep places like Missouri safe and Illinois. But if you look at what happened in Louisiana last week, Louisiana signed a heartbeat law. Yeah. But
so wait, when they're trying to get to the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court tells them, hey, it's just electrical activity, it's not a heartbeat, then what do they do?
I am 100% terrified, and that's why when Illinois did HB 40, a few years ago. That was
That's
so
last
key
year.
because it was
Yeah.
a trigger law. I mean, these are things that are so imperative. And then we're talking about the assault on women, right? We're talking about controlling our bodies, controlling what we do. We turn to Louisiana, and again, another heartbeat bill, Democratic governor, Democratic lawmaker. But what pushes me over the edge and incites me into fury is the law that was voted down this week.
Yes.
The minimum marriage age law. So the Democratic senator was very concerned about human trafficking because that's a huge problem ever since Katrina, where they lost so many documents, and the ports that are there make it very easy for trafficking, and it's a very heavy area. And so that was part of it.
Not our southern border.
Right. Not the southern border.
Yeah, we know that the problem isn't at the southern border, and that's going to be another discussion. So
Definitely.
another day.
But this lawmaker felt it would be really important. It would be important for protecting young women. And so the bill was to have, you must be 17 years of age to get married. And you could not, you could still get married with parental consent. Younger than that. But you could not, unless you were 17, marry any man 4 years older than you. Any woman, no one 4 years older. If you think about the power imbalance, right? So lawmakers are saying, well, if we do that, then we would have children out of wedlock, and we want to, we want children to be encouraged to get married and stay together. But
that's a stigma,
and that is actually not what's happening. The Advocate reports that between 2000 and 2010, 4,300 marriages were performed to children under the age of 16.
And I want to say, I read that same report, it's somewhere as young as 12 years old, and this is in the United States.
Right.
And they're not marrying a 14-year-old, they are marrying a 40-year-old.
And, exactly, Heidi.
Yeah.
And the second part of that Advocate research was that 80% of those 4,300 children are married to individuals 10 years older than them.
At least.
So, if you're talking about, controlling women and controlling women's health and controlling the narrative, we get to control the narrative.
Right.
No one else does.
You're talking about young people that don't have a high school education. They don't have a driver's license. They can't legally work. They can't sign for a loan. They can't rent an apartment. But yet they can get married. Now, this is... with very few exceptions, these are young girls.
Right. If you have two adolescents and mom and dad, they happen to get pregnant, such as this lawmaker pretends is the reason. If mom and dad want you to get married and you want to get married, great. That's a familial parental decision.
Right.
But the key to that law was that you couldn't marry 4 years older than you. Girls could not marry men 4 years older than them. Why? Because of a power imbalance, because of control, because of trafficking. So, let's say that, John has a stepdaughter and he rapes her and gets her pregnant. Well, she goes, he marries her without her consent because
she can't
legally consent.
She's not an adult.
And then she can never testify against him.
Right.
Because of marital laws.
That's exactly right.
And then you look at that and you think of things that have happened in the not too distant past. Warren Jeffs. Latter-day Saints. Yes. So he was the king of a church. He had...
His son committed suicide.
Just committed suicide. One of his youngest sons. Not one who was involved in helping the church when he went away. But he would take young girls as young as 10 years old and make them his brides. He had 32 wives and like 200 children.
And these are children he's marrying. This isn't a 30-year-old he met somewhere at church. This isn't a 25-year-old. This isn't a 40-year-old. These are little bitty girls that are prepubescent or barely pubescent, that have no hair in the places a pubescent girl would have, that have maybe not gone through their first period yet, that are virgins, and that is somehow desirable to him as an act of God. And I find that to be so repulsive and so offensive. And the fact that they wouldn't stand up for their children. These are little girls. They can't make these decisions on their own. And this isn't young boys marrying older women. These are girls. These
80% of those children are in some sort of arranged marriage, and this is in the United States. This is just down below
These are
where we
junior
are.
high kids. I teach horseback riding lessons for a living. Most of my kids that are here are that tender age, that 5th grade through 8th grade, when they aren't really that interested in boys. They're not interested in marriage. They're not interested in having babies. They want to go ride horses. They want to play with the kitty cats. They don't want to be mommies. You know, but that's what we're forcing on them, and it is a control issue.
So we're trying to control from the time they're young. We're controlling that narrative. We're terrifying the moms of those girls that if they stand up and say, no, you can't, the law goes against them.
Right.
We are controlling so much, and that's what's happening all across the country.
Yeah.
So to have a representative who says, you know, who misrepresents facts,
Yeah.
but then to have a state legislature that is so incredibly forward-thinking, and Representative Kelly Cassidy was a huge advocate for this, and she's fought for it. Mm-hmm. And she said something. I'm sorry if you see this, Representative Cassidy, and I misquote you. She said something to the effect of, "We have fought so hard and come so far, and there's not a chance in hell we're going back."
We're not going back, and I was livid with my own representative for voting no, because he doesn't get it and doesn't understand, you know, how hard we've had to fight. I'm older than Murray and had to live my own Me Too's, you know, a few times in the workplace, hence why I work for myself. And to think that when I first experienced it, when I went through Me Too at first, I didn't have the right to sue my employer for treating me differently because I was a woman. I didn't have the right to sue my employer or even speak up because I was assaulted.
Well, and then it goes. We that
is another topic.
We'll definitely do a show on very soon. We'll do a show on the Me Too movement and how that.
But this kind of goes with it.
Controls.
Oh, it's such a control issue, and we've had to fight so hard to get where we are now, and to have level footing. And we know that we're holding on by a thread. We know we are. And I had, you know, I've told you, Murray, I don't know how many times, this has never, ever, ever been about abortion. This has always been about control. Always been about control. Because
just like rape is never about sex. It's
never
always about
sex.
Power and control.
Right. Me Too movement moments are never about anything but control and power.
Absolutely.
And making your victim powerless. And in this case, we're making children powerless to get married. So.
I can't even. All I can say is, as we wrap up, we've gone for a half hour.
Yeah.
So all we can say is that thank you, Representative Cassidy, and all of the Illinois State Legislature
and
for everything, and Governor Pritzker. Thank you.
Gosh.
And then a big grounding of the week for Representative Kinzinger.
Oh, he's on a serious timeout.
Yeah, he's definitely in a timeout. I picture him in a timeout. Oh my goodness, you should definitely check out the picture. But we're going to wrap this up. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so
Please
much.
Subscribe, like, join us on Twitter at Heartland Mamas, MAMAS. On Facebook at Heartland Mamas. We've got a lot of really exciting things coming up.
We'd love to have your feedback and show suggestions, and we're looking for guests. We have some guests lined up to come in. So
if you have a topic, if you're passionate, let us know.
We'd love to have you in our little studio.
Thank you so much, and we will keep fighting the good fight. You keep fighting the good fight, too.
Have a wonderful day. This is coming out Wednesday.
Tomorrow,
tomorrow. And so thank you so much for tuning in. I sure appreciate it. Bye-bye.